Testing, testing. All right. Whose city? Our city. Whose city? Our city. Where's that warrior spirit? Woo! This is a champion city, and we're here today to ask for a champion budget. My name is Larissa Dugan Cuadra. I'm the executive director of the Central American Resource Center. I'm very happy to be here co-hosting with my colleague Annette Wong.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Budget Warriors. Thank you for joining today.
So this was a very short notice gathering, but we want to thank all communities who came to the call for an equity budget in San Francisco. We're a $14 billion city. There's enough resources to improve not only downtown, but the quality of life in every neighborhood in our city. So we're going to have a series of speakers representing various communities. We only have a half hour, so again, thank you all for showing up today. We're going to just move through the speakers. Each speaker has 2 minutes. So our next speaker is going to be the Budget Justice Coalition and Opportunities for an Equitable and Inclusive Budget. One of the coordinators, Matias Morimino.
Hi, everyone. Matias Morimino, co-chair of the Budget Justice Coalition. You know, I do trainings on the budget every year for community, and I tell people, if you leave with one thing, if you remember one thing about this budget, you should remember that there is enough money in this budget for all the community needs. This year, the San Francisco budget is $14 billion. That should be enough to serve all the people and all the communities you're going to hear from today. And yet we're here like every year demanding that a budget be equitable, be reasonable, and be serving community in the way that they need. During the pandemic, we've seen many needs, but none are as big as food. And so I want to give 30 seconds of my time to Rosie from TNDC, who's going to come talk to you about how we still need food in a city of billionaires and trillionaires.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Rosie. I work at TNDC, and I'm here on behalf of a coalition of over 30 nonprofit food providers in the city. At least $45 million are being cut from HSA alone for food security, and this will negatively impact over 70,000 households in San Francisco. Food insecurity has been a reality for many San Franciscans long before the pandemic and has only worsened in the past couple of years. Prior to COVID, there wasn't a coordinated response for food insecurity, and now that there is, it's proven to be very effective. So ending this would be very drastic. These funds and HSA's food coordination team's efforts have made it possible for many community organizations to provide much needed food resources. And with inflation and this recession, we're now seeing the food lines longer than ever. We're asking for the mayor and supervisors to keep the funding to what it is and help make this whole so that we can continue to best serve our community. Thank you.
With an unprecedented budget surplus, we can have a budget that will bring equity and economic recovery for all communities.
Our next speaker is representing the API Council. We have Dean Ito Taylor.
Thank you, everybody. This is really the true Rainbow Coalition. It's great to see everybody out here, and I have to give thanks to the Reverend Jesse Jackson for establishing the first Rainbow Coalition when all of you were probably not even born yet. But even during Pride Month, we know it even is a greater coalition. The Rainbow Coalition is even better and bigger. We're here for people that cannot be here to speak for themselves. They're busy working, taking care of their families, struggling to survive in San Francisco. People like survivors of gender-based violence or racial violence, small business owners, our own community, recent immigrants in our own immigrant communities, people that are seeking affordable housing, aging populations that are struggling to survive in San Francisco. We are here for them. We provide day-to-day services I'm representing the API Council, a council of 57 nonprofit service providers. We're not here just to talk to the press. We're here to tell you that our services need support. The people up here represent over 65% of the population of San Francisco, but we also represent over 70% of the people in poverty in San Francisco. So there needs to be equity in funding services to our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. We need to create an economic recovery for all, where the city works together for both bringing in revenue, but also to meet basic quality of life needs.
Our next speaker is from the San Francisco Latino Parity and Equity Coalition and the Latino Task Force. Ani Rivera from Galeria de la Raza and Latino Parity Equity Coalition, and Ivan Corrado Vega from the Latino Task Force.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ivan Corrado. I'm the manager for the Latino Task Force, and it's a pleasure to be up here with all the coalitions and all the folks that are representing hardworking people here in San Francisco. And this is just a pleasure for us to be here advocating and presenting our best case for why we need these services. The Latino Task Force was born as a response to COVID for the Latino community and other vulnerable populations. Our response to food has been a model that last week in the budget hearings, HSA admittedly said that we were a model for them and established best practices, but they're cutting our services by 50%. Our health response has been a partnership with the Department of Public Health to bring low barrier and no barrier testing and vaccination to the Latino community and other vulnerable communities here in San Francisco. As of this Monday, the Latino positivity rate for COVID is 35% here in San Francisco. Yet they want to cut services altogether. So what we say is no to that, continue funding health and low barrier access to health services here in San Francisco for testing and vaccination for the Latino community and all other vulnerable communities. Our resource hubs, OEWD, again, another department that admitted that we helped to set a standard for faster and easier delivery of resources into the community for folks who are facing economic impacts, loss of job, loss of wages, and other impacts, other social impacts that existed before COVID. But the Latino Task Force has created this response to make sure that food insecurity is addressed in our vulnerable communities, that health is addressed in our vulnerable communities, that access to resources is addressed in our vulnerable communities. These disparities existed in our communities before COVID. They're existing now through the recovery of COVID, and they'll exist. So we think that our services in the Latino community and other vulnerable communities is going to be a 5 to 10 year recovery process for us. So what we say is continue to fund us, continue to fund the admittedly best practices that these departments touted during the pandemic. So fund us, continue to fund the community, and especially the vulnerable population of essential workers that kept this economy going through the pandemic. Thank you.
I'm just going to say a few words to, add on to that. It's not just about supporting for us to survive. We're in a moment of recovery that we need to start thinking, as my colleague said here, 3 to 5 years ahead. When we think about this city budget that represents $14 billion, why are we only investing in, the mid-market area? We need to be thinking critically about our entire city. Communities of color live in all of our, 11 districts, and that should be reflected in the budget. A budget that we have pride, it's the will of the people, that has the investment long term. We want to see that. We believe in a holistic approach. It's all about food, yes, housing, yes, education, yes. It's also about allowing us to thrive and live in joy. Arts and culture, having a holistic approach to how we want to see our communities thrive. I'm tired of this conversation of just survival. We've got to thrive. And so support all communities of color, support our thriving. And I know that the mayor and the board of supervisors can balance this budget to make sure that we are reflected in this next year budget and moving forward. So thank you and happy Pride.
Thank you, Annie. While it's critical that San Francisco recovers its tax revenue, it is also imperative that the city's recovery center on improving quality of life for everyone who lives, works, goes to school, and plays in this world-class champion city with a $14 billion annual budget.
Our next speaker, representing the American Indian Collective Budget Coalition, is Shariah Souza.
Hello, everyone.
Where are the black organizations?
Hello, everyone. My name is Shariah Souza Tatatas Pablo Ute Kiowa, and I'm the Executive Director of the American Indian Cultural District. Today, we would like to, acknowledge that it's not an easy job to balance the budget for an entire city. We're here today to advocate for a budget, like all of our relatives, that addresses the needs, the people of this city, the heart of this city. Just like the Latino Task Force, the American Indian Cultural District was born at the start of the pandemic as a collective response to the American Indian black disparities in San Francisco and to address the needs of the pandemic. For the last 3 years, we've done a collective ask with American Indian local organizations. American Indians are 2.1% of the population in San Francisco, yet we have the lowest employment rates, the lowest housing rates, and some of the lowest graduation rates in the entire city. This year, the American Indian Cultural District advocated for a Truth and Healing Reparations Advisory Committee under the Human Rights Commission, a response to the 2007 discrimination by omission report done by over 150 local American Indian community members to talk about the lack of addressing American Indian needs in the city. Today, we are still dealing with the same problems. This American Indian Truth and Healing Reparations Advisory Committee under the Human Rights Commission would create a 10-year comprehensive plan to create these inequities. We asked the mayor and the board of supervisors to reconsider their budget this year in order to create this comprehensive plan to address one of the most impacted communities in the city and to address all of our communities and the needs of all of our people. So our ask may be unique to the needs of our communities and our needs as people to serve our community, but the needs as people to serve our communities are not. We stand in unity with our relatives here today, our Black communities, our Pacific Islander communities, our API communities, our Latinx communities. We all need housing, we all need food, and we all need cultural-based education and programming to serve our people, our children, our elders, the non-replaceable fabric of this city. So while budgeting may be hard, we ask that you reconsider, and we ask that you look to the people here today, the accomplishments that you've heard and how we serve our people, and we ask that you create an equitable budget so we can all meet the needs of our communities. Thank you.
Whose city?
Our city.
Whose city?
Our city.
Next, we're going to hear from the Arts and Culture group, and Jenny Leung from Chinese Cultural Center of San Francisco is going to represent.
Good morning, everyone. We are gathered here today, joined by artists, arts organizations that are from our communities. We all understand that arts and culture are the soul of our communities. They are part of a healthy and safe community. And yet, our community-based artists and arts organizations have been always under-resourced, and they have been displaced from our communities. And then COVID came, and we are still recovering from this trauma. And during the pandemic, we have shown that arts and culture are deeply integral to our communities to be safe, healthy, and thriving. And millions in this budget have been given to large organizations that do not serve our communities, and we are always fighting for the crumbs. And so we are advocating today to have a portion of that support, and we're advocating for space, and we're advocating to stay in our communities. And we are standing in solidarity and really proud to stand in solidarity with our partners in affordable housing, in food security, in childcare, and senior services to demand justice and equity for all. and that includes support for our community-based arts and culture. Thank you very much.
As we learned during the height of the pandemic, our city's response and recovery efforts are hinged on sustaining and strengthening safety net services citywide to increase neighborhoods' resiliency and address the critical needs of populations facing health, economic, housing, work, and food insecurity.
Our next speaker is Joe Wilson from the Homeless Workers Collaborative, HESPA.
Thank you. Welcome, Rainbow Warriors. We know every day in our lives that the budget is a statement of our values, and it's about justice. So this is not about charity, it's about justice. It's about investing in those communities who have carried this city through the pandemic, who every day give people a reason to hope for better. And that's what this is about. We ask our city leaders to remember what drew them to this work in the first place. It was about justice. It was making life better in this city. That's their job. That's what we're calling them on to do today. So investing in housing subsidies, strengthening our housing safety net, investing in training and development for our emergency workers in our homelessness response system so that they have a path forward and up in the work that they've chosen to do, investing in behavioral health services so everyone in need has access to the support that they need, investing in workforce programs and employment programs. During the pandemic, more than 350,000 San Franciscans experienced unemployment in this city. That's a staggering number. That is nearly half the adult working population. And so we have a serious job to do on our hands. I know the previous speaker mentioned Fred Hampton. I'm actually one of the OGs in the room. I actually met Fred Hampton when I was a kid. One of the things that Fred Hampton was famous for is creating the first Rainbow Coalition and his statement about solidarity. You don't fight fire with more fire, you fight fire with water. You don't fight racism with more racism, you fight racism with solidarity. That's what this is about. I'll leave you with this poem that was read by Reverend Jesse Jackson in his presidential campaign in 1988. I am tired of sailing my little boat safe inside the harbor bar. I want to go out where the great ships float, out in the deep where the great ones are. And if my frail craft should prove too slight against the waves that crush the billows o'er, I'd rather go down in this stirring fight than drowse to death by safety's shore. We need to take our ships out on the deep where the great ones are. That's our charge today. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, for those inspiring words, and thank you to everyone for being in solidarity today. We know the city has budget reserves, and we need them to be flexible, to be creative, and to dig into those couch cushions to support an equitable budget.
Our next speaker is from the Bay Area Essential Workers Collaborative, Claire Lau.
Hello, my community warriors. Hey. My name is Claire Lau. I'm with the Chinese Progressive Association, and we are part of the Bay Area Essential Workers Agenda Coalition. And we are there together with Dolores Street Community Services, Trabajadores Unidos, Workers United, Mujeres Unidas y Activas, Filipino Community Center, Filipino Advocates for Justice, and the Bay Area Black Worker Resource Center. Together, we represent thousands of workers of color and immigrant workers in the Bay Area. As a coalition, we surveyed over 1,400 essential workers, restaurant workers, domestic workers, janitors, and many others who kept our city running since day one of the pandemic. We found that more than half of those surveyed could not take paid sick leave during the pandemic. We found that more than a quarter would not report a violation done by their employer. That is unacceptable. And that is why we're calling on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors to invest $1 million to increase resources for workers' rights outreach and enforcement. But going back to the normal pre-pandemic is not enough. We need quality, stable, living wage, thriving wage jobs for our communities. And that's why we're also calling on the city to invest $16.3 million over 2 years for paid training, paid job trainings and workforce development programs for San Franciscans who need it the most, like those experiencing homelessness, those undocumented English language learners, SRO residents, and many more who are excluded from these programs. We're standing here today in solidarity with our siblings who have been doing the work supporting our most vulnerable communities. With San Francisco's historic budget surplus, our city must invest in our communities who suffered the greatest impact from COVID and stand to lose the most as inflation is at an all-time high. So power to the people. Sí se puede. Thank you.
¿Se puede? ¿Se puede? Whose city?
Our city.
Whose city?
Our city.
Our next speaker will be Naima Charles, representing early education and care.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Naima Charles, and I am one of the organizers in the SF Early Care and Education Advocacy Coalition. We represent thousands of San Francisco parents and child care educators in San Francisco. If your parents were anything like mine, maybe when you were growing up and you didn't have child care, they told you, stay home, keep the door locked, and don't answer for anyone else. That is unfortunately not possible for infants and toddlers. 0 to 3 children don't have the ability to stay home, take care of themselves, and leave the door locked. That's unrealistic. Now, in San Francisco, in the San Francisco child care system, we don't have enough child care to serve over 90% of children 0 to 3 in SF. That means if you're a parent 0 to 3, there's a 9 out of 10 chance we don't have enough child care for you in the city of San Francisco. That's a huge issue. One, parents can't go to work, and with child care in SF averaging between $1,800 to $2,400 per child per month, it's cheaper if you have more than one child to stay home and not work. That puts limitations on families and limitations on income. Furthermore, let's talk about the children. Children are not going to be kindergarten ready if they are not in childcare environments to give them the resources and socio-emotional learning that they need. I think some of you may have heard of or read the book, The Body Keeps the Score. It talks about trauma, its lasting impact, and how to heal. What it also noted is the younger you are, the more severe the trauma has an impact on you, and the harder it is to resolve. So if you're under the age of 7 and experience trauma, you're likely to have it lifelong, unfortunately. However, what the book also found, the number one thing to impact and recorrect the course of adverse childhood experiences and trauma is quality early care and education. We cannot afford to not invest in this program, especially for the future of San Franciscans. Right now, the city of SF raises on average $120 million for child care via ballot proposition. We're seeing right now in the city budget, instead of the city of San Francisco wanting to find new funding sources, they're trying to take from our child care funding to fund other programs that need funding. SF needs to be bold and find another funding source, as we don't even have enough to serve 90% of children 0 to 3. Furthermore, food insecurity. We're talking about this a lot. We're asking for $1 million from the Board of Supervisors to go to our child care food program. Right now, a child care educator is barely making ends meet and makes around the cost of a McDonald's worker if they work at family child care. This is extremely necessary. So thank you all.
Our next group up will be representing immigration legal defense groups and immigrant justice portfolio, and we have Amanda Alvarado Flor from La Raza Centro Legal and Adubu Traore with African Advocacy Network.
Good morning, everyone. So happy to be here today. Amanda Alvarado Ford, Director of La Raza Centro Legal and practicing immigration attorney. I'm here on behalf of the San Francisco Immigrant Legal Defense Collaborative with my wonderful colleague, Adubu Traore, who will take the mic in a moment. And together we are representing 15 legal defense organizations, including the Arab Resource Organizing Center, the African Advocacy Network, the La Raza Centro Legal, Asian Pacific Islander Legal Outreach. Together, these 15 warrior agencies represent our most vulnerable. We're asking the mayor and the board of supervisors to fund our vulnerable immigrants seeking asylum because they've been persecuted. Why? Because of their religion, because of their race, because of their political opinion, because they belong to a family that the government or a group in their society hates and is hunting down. We must offer these individuals due process, notice, a hearing, legal representation in San Francisco Immigration Court. If we don't defend these most vulnerable people, our newcomers to this beautiful San Francisco, then no one is safe. We need to speak up. We need to speak up now, and we need to build an equitable budget. Thank you. Adubu.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I've already been introduced, but as every time I have the opportunity to do it, I'm going to repeat it. When we talk about the immigrant community, in general, you hear people saying, oh, those Mexicans, this is not right. This is not true. We are immigrants from all over the world, and we are an inclusive group. And I would like to go ahead and say, yeah, we're not here against anybody, but our crowd is a cry for solidarity. We're saying some efforts have been made. Now it's up to the city even to leverage of those efforts, because the fight against hunger, the fight against poverty, the fight against injustice has no end. And we're gonna be here until, we hear clearly what we want to hear from our authorities. So the work needs to be done. Let's get all of us, together in an effort of solidarity, and then let's make it. We believe the city can make it. It's a political decision, and also we're playing our role. We're gonna be here to call on them, and so that they can take the right decisions, the right actions. Thank you again.
All right, just a couple more speakers. I want to say hello to our little ones. Whose city, kids? Our city. Whose city? Our city. We love you, children. This is your city, and we're here because we want the city to be good for you in every way, for every child. Yay! Thank you, little ones.
Our next speaker will be representing Horizons and Health Services, Selena Lucero.
Hello, everyone. I just got a question for y'all. City of San Francisco, if you wondered who our tribe is, this is it. Our young ones are here. Our folks from across the city are here. We need to be proud. We need to be proud to have the privilege to be here and talk. I want to let you all know we are a collective, y'all. We are one. The health and well-being of our community is rooted in the collective health of all of our communities of color. We need to remember that. Tú eres mi otro yo, San Pancho. I am you and you are me. And what that means is if I am not well, you are not well. And if you are not well, I am not well. We will never achieve an equitable economic recovery if our Black and brown, our API, our indigenous, our LGBTQI plus two-spirited folks are not healthy if they're not well. You know why? Because our folks whose labor feeds, houses, teaches, educates, and cares for the city of San Francisco. In fact, any semblance of an economic recovery hinges on the health of all of our communities of color. So I'm gonna say that again real quick so you hear me. San Francisco cannot eat if our communities of color are not well, because we are the ones that feed you. Our children cannot receive teachings if our communities don't have access to mental health and substance use services so that they can be well themselves. And workers across the city, most especially our essential and nonprofit workers who have worked throughout the pandemic to keep this city alive, cannot show up to work when our positivity rates are still in the 30, 35% range. That's ridiculous. COVID is not over, you all. and we still need access to community-based low barrier testing, vaccination sites, especially with the recent approval of our child vaccine, right? So in addition to that, our wraparound services, access to our community hubs and wellness teams are critical. We must remember that the key ingredient to a thriving economic recovery is a healthy workforce. And with the $14 billion budget, we could do both. We envision a recovery that leads to true health and wealth for all of our peoples, where zip codes do not dictate our death rates or our birth rates or our graduation rates. So when you empower a community to care for itself, it thrives, right? We witnessed that front row, floor seats, like we did when the Warriors took home the win in Game 6. We sat and saw this happen. So I'm gonna leave you all where we began, in the teachings of our community. Tu eres mío, tú eres yo, San Pancho. I am you and you are me, and I will not be well until all of us are well. Power to our people.
Okay, let's try this again, kids. Whose city? Our city. Let's go, kids. Whose city? Our city.
Our next speaker will be representing the Pacific Islander Hut, Eleanor Lafidi.
Hi, everybody. I'm the founder of She Bliss Transitions, a nonprofit organization helping women coming up out of prison. And I am one of 13 organizations that are under the SALT group. And we are Pacific Islander Resources. Before I go any further, let me pay tribute and ask and pay my manners. In paying tribute, this is our Native American, the first on this land. Rightfully belongs to them. You know what? I had a speech ready to go. I can't do it. I'm gonna speak from the heart. There should be no reason why we're standing here begging for money that belongs to us. This budget is ours. $16 billion and we have nothing? Everybody here is represented by each and every one of these faces. The money that is through here comes from our ancestors. It comes from our people who have worked in the background. No more background. No more background. The red, the black, the brown, the yellow. We have fought for this country. We have fought for this city. This belongs to us. There should be no reason why we're standing here asking for what belongs to us. Our people are in the streets starving. They're eating out of garbage cans. They're homeless. And why are we standing here asking for money that belongs to us? Every organization, every CBO are doing the best they can, but they're being fed little by little. No. Give us what we got coming so we can take care of our peoples. Our community is in disparity. Our community are crying. They're seeking help. We're here to help them, but we need what they got in here. We need that budget. But I'm not here to bash the mayor, but I'm here to ask for what is rightfully belonging to each and every face here. Every organization that came up here to speak should have no reason not to be able to get a pot, something out of that pot. San Francisco is one of the richest cities. So why are we poor like this? There should be no reason why we're asking for babies to get fed, for a better life for them tomorrow. We're here today, so we're asking, give us what we got coming. Include us, include us, include us, include us, include us. We matter, we count, and we're here, and we're staying. It belongs to us. Thank you.
remind everyone that this Friday, June 24th at 10 a.m., will be public comment day on the annual budget. That is our chance for community members, for people from different neighborhoods across the city to come out and speak to your needs, speak to the services, to the critical aspects of why we're asking for this budget inclusion. We want a diverse, equitable, share the pie equally. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to the little ones for being out here. And we, juntos, en la unidad está nuestra fuerza. Our power is in our unity. ¿Se puede? Sí se puede.
Let's lift all boats together. See you all on Friday.
You can count that.